Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Dad Talk Today. We got a conversation that we're going to talk about this morning, but before we get into this, guys, it's a very important day. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, ding the bell so you get notifications on when we're doing these conversations. Many ways you can support the podcast down at the bottom: Cash App, Venmo, Patreon, Dad Talk Today, no spaces. We got super chats and memberships on YouTube, and we got stars and memberships there on Facebook. Today is a very important day, so if you're tuning in, I just wanted to go ahead and get this out of the way. There's going to be two shows today. Me and the doc will be talking early this morning about probably several different topics because we get into it, and that's how we like to do it. Also, tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, at 7 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock Mountain, and 5 o'clock Pacific, I'll be joined with Jennifer Reed, which is the wife of Chad Reed that was murdered in Lubbock, Texas. We will have Robert Mast, which is the father of John Mast, and we will also be joined by Maria Morris, who was the fiance of Justin Goolsby, who was killed in Missouri. These are all three families that had somebody that got murdered at a custody exchange when they went to go see their kids. And I can tell you this, I have got several more that are inside of my inbox, and a lot of these cases have some time between it. And what happens is they wait. The media be on it in the early stages, but later on when they need media out there and saying, hey, we're going to court, we need some support, a lot of times they're nowhere to be found. So we want to make sure that we give them a platform to speak about what's going on and pay tribute to these fathers. Again, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern tonight. Please join. I've made a couple of posts about it. If you would, share it around the community, and let's all show up and support these guys. I know it's got to be a hard subject. It always is. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about what happens when you stop fighting. And that can be in many ways. What happens when you stop arguing back and forth in the conversations with your ex? Or what happens when you say, I can't do this legal battle anymore? You got any thoughts on that, Brooks?
I mean, well, it's a broad question, and it can go just so many different ways.
Yep.
But God, there's so much crap there. So one of them is that this entire system, the family court system, is there's a narrative, and it's been, and I'll say it, it's been put together by the left. The left is not family friendly in general, that not all. Some of our biggest supporters here in the Texas legislative branch, whatever, are Democrats in our state. They're very pro family. So a lot of our Hispanic Democrat legislators, some of them are anti, but that's a different reason. But the traditional ones, so Hispanic families, Asian families, culturally, they're very big on extended family. If you know a really, Mexican family and you go visit them, their uncle lives next door, grandma lives in the house with them. Basically, the whole block, they're related to somebody there. And they use each other as a social network, and they're very big on the extended family. So we actually have a lot of Democrat legislators in our state who support the family.
Yep.
But when I say the left, I'm not talking, that doesn't mean, because there's Republicans that I consider the left. They just have
absolutely.
They have an R next to their name because they ran in a county where they knew if they didn't have an R, they wouldn't win.
Yep.
So when I'm talking left, it doesn't have anything to do with Democrat, Republican. It has to do with an ideology. We've got a bunch of Republicans who I think are more far left than a lot of our Democrats.
More dangerous too, because you don't know where they stand.
Yeah. So there's a narrative, and whether you're talking about domestic violence, protect women, all this other stuff. And when I talk about this stuff, I try to clarify so people, but they'll take these clips and misuse them. Should we be beating the crap out of our wives? No, never said that. But the stats clearly show and have for decades that women are the perpetrators of domestic violence in intimate partner relationships more often than men. That's just the fact. And it has been for a long time, but when they went for VAWA and all these other things, they fudged the statistics. They redefined abuse. What I as a woman do to you is not abuse, but if you do the same thing to me, it's abuse. And so they literally just lied to get all these programs in place. So that's one thing. The other was the normalization of divorce, right? The divorce rate was in the floor until the early 70s after no fault divorce, and they started normalizing the destruction of the family. But even back then, we knew that the family is what's best for children, because a lot of people want to take this and turn it and say, oh, it's just about the dads or it's just about the parents. No, it's about the kids. And they'll try to spin it and say, you're just doing this for you. No, I'm doing this for my kids. And in my personal story, I grew up in one of these homes and was placed with the wrong parent. And it was an absolute effing nightmare. My childhood was miserable, and I've had effects from it my entire life. And being a researcher in that area, I know exactly why it happened to me. And I do not want it to happen to my son, your daughter, anything like that. But they always try to, the deadbeat dad. So we've got this narrative. The family's not important. That huge narrative that came out from all the feminist BS, and people will get all. I had a debate with somebody this morning. Feminism, they just want to be treated equal in this, and they don't believe they can do everything that men can do, in some circumstance. And I'm like, but that's not feminism. You're redefining the word because you like to label yourself a feminist. Feminism is the VAWA, is the I can kill a baby with abortion and not have to talk to the father, but if I choose to have it, he has to pay for the rest of the baby's life. All this other, that's feminism. But we have this narrative that the normalization of the destruction of the thing that is healthiest for a child, and then if you do not agree with that, it's just like Christians. A true Christian doesn't hate the LGBT community. They don't approve of their sin. They don't endorse it. They will call it out all day long, and then they'll turn around and invite them to church and ask them to stay afterwards and eat egg salad, right? But all Christians get labeled to be homophobic because you're against their agenda. Right? If you are anti-abortion, you hate women and you endorse rape, right? And so there's this narrative that has been going forever and ever that on the far left, if you oppose what in many cases absolutely disgusting behavior and policy, then you're a bigot, you're a homophobe, you hate women, you're for raping women and abusing. And so they've created this thing and they just pound it and pound it and pound it. It's like in North Korea. I don't know if they still do, but they used to have, all the housing is owned by the government, right? They own everything. And in your house, you have a speaker on the wall that constantly played propaganda radio. You couldn't turn it off. There was no control. It just played it. So they're brainwashing you literally.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's what the left does so much better than the right. The left is amazing at getting out the message. And if you go to a spiritual thing, they're literally working for the enemy. But anybody who opposes this disgusting stuff, and you can go people in Texas who are familiar with Amy Breslin, just go look at her posts. None of her posts ever logically address anything. She's the lobbyist for the Texas Family Law Fund. All she does is immediately turn around and call us deadbeats, or they want to get out of child support, or they're terrorists and all. And that's what the left does, because the left can't sit down and logically defend their point. They can't. It doesn't hold up to the research. It doesn't hold up to the science. And when we go back to all these programs that have been implemented, they literally produce fallacious stuff, lobbied for it. And the people on the right, and Christians specifically, they were just laid back. No, okay, well, whatever. We'll give you a couple of inches. Well, we've been giving them inches they've taken us miles, and now we're like, how the hell did we get here? And part of that problem is the thing that we should value the most that would bolster our society and keep everything together is the thing that we've been destroying.
Yep.
And now we're so far to the other side that when you come back and say, hey, this is wrong, then we're now attacking the system because the system is endorsed and learned how to make money off of it. And we've just gone so far down that path that, when you're a father, and this happens to mothers also, because I know moms, I've worked with moms, a bunch of them on my Facebook thing, who the same thing is. Well, if you stand up and say, this is effed up, this isn't good for my kid, you are literally psychologically and emotionally abusing my kid, judge, lawyer, court, whoever is involved. Then you are immediately, what do they call you? They don't say you're fighting like hell for your child. They say that you're confrontational, you're aggressive, you're intimidating, you're scaring. You go to a therapist and ask for your records, and they'll tell you no. Legally, they have to give them to you, and they'll say no. And you say, well, if you don't, I'm going to file a BHEC complaint and take you to court. They'll immediately file something with the court saying that you came in their office, terrified them, their staff were terrified, and you're a dangerous, unhinged person. So if you do not endorse the sinful, disgusting behavior that this industry has, you are now basically a terrorist. Everybody's terrified of you. Everybody, oh my God, I'm so scared. And that's why you have to record everything, because you have to record it. I've testified in many cases where the father has gone in and asked for records and said, and just been, here's my ID, I need to get the records. And they say no. And he's like, okay, well, I'm going to sue you and go after your license. And then they issue a report to the court saying their staff was terrified. He came in and he was so aggressive, and oh my gosh, we don't know what to do. And they're all in the corner crying. And then he plays the audio. And all it is him saying, I really need the records. Okay, if you're not going to give them to me, well, then I'll take you to court. Thank you very much. And then in some of these cases, all of a sudden, they don't want any part of the case because they just got called out committing aggravated perjury. But they will literally go in and lie because that's the way it works. So you have to record everything. And some people live in states where you can't. And I'm not telling you to break the law, but if I lived there, I would break the law. And I'm only speaking for me. I would record the F out of everything, because they will lie. They will make stuff up. The same thing with if you have a high conflict spouse. In my case, mine, when she got a temporary restraining order on me, said that I threatened to kill her and my son, right? And this is how insane it is. She was recording the whole thing. And so when they get the restraining order, I'm like, well, we need to replay. She was recording it. We need to play it. And they wouldn't play it. And I'm like, she has the recording of it. Y'all even speak about it in your filing. Where's that evidence to show? But she wouldn't play it, and the judge wouldn't make her. Said, nope. I believe, and I'm like, because it didn't show that. What it showed was me putting my kid in the back seat of the car and just saying, hey, I need to get my stuff from your house. No, it's my stuff now because, it's in the, and I'm like, that's not, you don't know how to work it. It's my stuff. Well, that was enough for a restraining order. And that's the thing is if you fight it, you will be labeled. So if you fight it, and again, I just had this yesterday with some ass clown on another podcast. If you know the law, you'll win. No, you won't. It's not the way it works. If you just do that, he kept saying, everybody needs to research this. I won 50-50. Broken clock twice a day, jackass. It doesn't mean it works.
We call those the Mighty Mouse.
Yeah, you are the exception. Well,
yes.
You people just don't understand. Oh, come and publish it. You'll be rich. But for most people, male or female, when you fight the system, you are now their enemy. They're going to label you a terrorist. They're going to you will lose more visitation, and you do have to know the law, because if you know enough of it, you can actually start to pigeonhole them to where they get, I guess the word is nervous, because they see that you're about to try to do something legally with them, and then they start to back off. But if you just go in and fight and keep doing stuff, and you don't know how to use their laws against them, their criminal laws, their aggravated perjury, official oppression, all that kind of stuff, they'll just steamroll you. You'll be on supervised visitation forever. They'll call it a temporary order, and you'll never see your kid again because you're fighting the thing that is their livelihood, you know.
Well, and so I think when thinking about this, I understand you do get the exception. Every once in a while, you're going to see a guy that wins, and he thinks all men are supposed to be the same. They don't realize it's not the same court, not the same actors, not the same anything in many of these cases. Unfortunately, on the other side of that, the ones that do know the law, that have the evidence, they do everything the right way, and then they just keep ending up on the losing side. We're going to have some of those cases tonight. I dare you look into the John Mass case and see. He had evidence. They wouldn't even look at evidence, guys. Yeah. But these guys try everything, and then they are blocked every time they go to do something, and they get to a point, I don't want to do this anymore. Or maybe they're reaching out to their ex, and every time they reach out to their ex, I see the kid, she's in contempt of court. Then they take it to court. The judges aren't doing anything about the contempt of court, and here's the people doing it the right way, and eventually they get to the point where I'm not going to do this anymore. And they think that's going to get them away. Unfortunately, guys, when you stop fighting, that doesn't make it go away. And many times it makes it get worse. We understand how you get to the spot to say, I'm not touching it anymore. At the same time, it digs the hole deeper. This system is 100% designed to keep you in here, that hamster on the wheel, and to bring you back no matter what. We are not letting you get away. The system is very, strategic and how it's set up. I'm going to read some of these guys' comments that have been through some of this. This one, he was here early before we even started the podcast, so I'm going to get this one out. Vertusserable. I hope I said that right. My ex-wife was a child of divorce where the dad was constantly badmouthed, kept away from the kids, and he just rolled over to keep peace. Two things happened according to the family. Their son had no male role model and was always in trouble with the law, never finished school. He abuses alcohol and is violent. He holds a lot of resentment towards his dad, who abandoned him. My ex-wife also abuses alcohol, never finished school, and plays the damsel in distress to get people to do things for her. She is a user of people and pulled her mom's divorce playbook out against me. I fought that playback at a tremendous cost to myself, my entire life savings, but I will do anything for my kids, and they know that, and I firmly believe they are better off. Had I rolled over, I would be better off financially, and the mental and physical damage to me would be less. But I know kids need a dad in their life. I've seen what happens when they don't. Now let's take what this gentleman just said here, Brooks, because I think it's a very good example of what I was saying before I read these comments. This guy thinks he would be better off financially. The kids would have been better off without having to be in this fight. Do you necessarily agree? Would this not have found a way to bring him in there anyway?
So there's so many damn permutations. I mean, you can give up, and it also depends on their counsel. If their counsel thinks that they can make more money, they will have, you can quit and they'll keep filing stuff on you to increase child support.
Yep.
I was watching a guy last night, and his ex, called the child support office, and can't remember what state he's in. Anyway, he said, our daughter, she just turned 18. So he called and was like, okay, this is over. We're done, right? And they told him, no, your ex said your daughter is going to school and you're on the hook for child support till she's 24. And he's like, my daughter's not in school and she lives with me. She's moved into my house. And it took him like 5 or 6 months to prove, and had to get his daughter to sign stuff and say, no, I'm living with my dad. I'm not going to college right now. I'm taking a break. I'm not doing anything. But they still said, no, you need to keep paying us. So I mean, the ridiculousness of it is, can you give up and walk away? Yeah. I mean, I've heard of a lot of men who've signed away their rights just to be done. They've relinquished their parental rights, so they can't be taken back into court ever again. Because the system, and some people do it just because they're a piece of garbage, right?
Right.
So yes, there are those. Yes, there are the deadbeats. There are the pieces of garbage.
Absolutely.
There's also men with 20 kids by 10 different women and don't see any of them. So yes, there are pieces of garbage. But I'll talk about so I'm a product of this system. My mother did the exact same thing to my father when I was 2 years old. That happens still today, has happened to me, has happened to many other men. the false allegations. When I got to be in my teens, I actually found the divorce papers. So this is a long time ago. I was born in 71. So in the 80s, at some point, actually found the divorce papers and I read them. There was all these allegations of abuse. And I knew they weren't true because when I was little, I saw my dad up to about the time I was 5 years old and then didn't see him again until I was about 16. But by that time, I was hooked on drugs and alcohol. Anyway, it's a long story.
Yeah.
But I would come home from visiting him and I wouldn't want to get out of the car. They'd have to drag me out of the car. I'd lay in the front yard and kick and scream and cry because I wanted to live with my father because it was a completely different world. My mother is a borderline. So I grew up with a borderline. So I know what a borderline is, and it's an absolute nightmare. And what they did is they took me crying and screaming and went to court and said, it's not healthy for me to visit my father because I come back and I cry for days on end. Right?
Yep.
And because no one in that court went, oh, well, maybe he's crying because he's coming back to a place that is miserable. Right? My entire childhood was an absolute misery growing up in the household I did. It was. There was nothing good about my childhood, period. I'm a high school dropout that had a drug and alcohol problem from the time I was in 7th grade. I mean, it was just a nightmare. But that's what they did back then, and that's what they still do now. And part of the thing is at that point there was no internet, right? There was no cell phones. There was none of this stuff. So whenever my mother decided she didn't want my father to see me, she'd move. She'd move from Dallas to Houston. Right? You can't find anybody. You can't pull up the internet. So he would literally go and drive the streets of Houston looking for her car. He would go down there and stay with friends looking for me until he could find her. And when he did find her, he'd see me for a month or two. And then she would move back to Dallas with no address. And that's what, and so he fought like hell to a point to where when they started filing this stuff on him and said, the Brooks is having horrible problems because of him every time he visits, and they ended my visitation with the only person that was safe for me, because it was completely different with him, my grandparents on that side. And they were actually so nice to me that it made me anxious because I wasn't used to people being nice to me. So when I was there, I loved it, but I didn't know how to accept it because that wasn't my norm. It actually, I kept waiting for the other shoe to fall. Like, okay, something bad's got to happen. Something bad's got to happen because that's what I was used to, but the bad stuff never did happen. And so they actually, took me out of his life or him out of my life, however you want to look. And I didn't see him again for 11 years until I was a hot mess and my mom couldn't deal with me. He never quit. He was forced to quit. We have the same system today where men are beat down with the child support payments. You get behind on child support, lo and behold, here come those enforcements. Well, we're going to lock you up. We're going to take your driver's license. You can't register your car. We're going to take your professional license. We're going to force you to pay. And in reality, the attorney general isn't forcing you to pay, and they know that. What they do when they do that, they get to tell the federal government. See, so some people have it wrong. The Title 4D funds that we get in Texas, it's not based on they're not getting a cut of the money I pay, right? The federal government reimburses the state for enforcement actions. So what the attorney general claims they spent to enforce and get me to pay child support is what they get reimbursed for. So if everybody was on child support, paid on time, never had to have a follow-up call or email, and everything went perfectly, the attorney general's office would not get Title 4D funds like they do. So they make more money when they have to call, send emails, send out letters, send out warnings, because every one of those they get to bill because that's an enforcement action, right? And so I want you to be behind because now I'm racking up bills for enforcement actions. I want you to go to jail because that's a huge enforcement thing. I can write off all kinds. You see what I'm saying? They're actually want you to not be able to work in this system. So a lot of fathers are forced out. I mean, it's a type of slavery, And when I was talking earlier about the far left is often against everything we're trying to do in reform because it doesn't suit their agenda. And I mentioned like Hispanic, a lot of the traditional Hispanic, not the Victoria Niaves and pieces of garbage like that who profit off of it, but the Raymonds and the others, they are on our side because they know how the family is important to their culture and their voters and everything else. We also have, the funny thing is, not all, God, I hate having a not all, because somebody's going to jump in there. Oh, no, there's a, okay, not, let me just preface this, not all on anything I say. You'll never hear me say all, always, but some clown's going to get ass hurt and start putting, oh, he's over there. I know.
Always going to be somebody that gets offended, brother, no matter what you do.
But when we look at our black legislators, the vast majority of them are Democrat, right? The vast majority of the black male Democrat legislators are not on our side, even though there's a huge fatherless issue. And ironically, the black Democrat legislators who do see this are usually the women,
females,
because and this is going to sound, oh, it's racist. No, because they have seen the women in their culture, because no-fault divorce has devastated the black community. Prior to no-fault divorce, the intact marriage rate was about 76%. After no-fault divorce, it's the opposite. It's about 24%. So over 3/4 of black children are raised in households without a father, and it has decimated their community.
Well, in Section 8?
Yeah. Well, Section 8, yeah. If you have a father there, you can't get into Section 8.
Can't get any assistance.
And so it is decimated. So a lot of these black women legislators have seen or raised or witnessed the black women in their community trying to raise kids without a father, and it just being an absolute disaster, a nightmare. And a lot of these black men are like, yeah, whatever. And so to me, it's kind of ironic that the women, because these laws are targeted towards women to get women support, because women are the swing voters for both the left and the right.
Yep.
Women are the swing voters. And one of the things that the Republicans don't understand, if we get into politics, is single women vote overwhelmingly Democrat. And so by creating, especially single mothers, so by creating broken households, the Republicans are literally bolstering the left, who's destroying the family by destroying the family. And so we have this thing where it's like a perfect storm. And all these shill scumbags that we have who are supposed to stand up and defend children, families, and all this other stuff are like, well, it doesn't affect me today. I'll go out and say the right things. I'll quote some Bible verses. I'll do this. But it's your actions, not your words. We've got some legislators here in the Collin County area, Christian conservative, and they're always popping up their little God bless thing with their picture out of their backyard with the sun rising and the little verse and all this crap. And then their next post is them congratulating a shill scumbag judge getting appointed to an appellate bench, who I know is a shill scumbag because I've seen her in action and I've seen her post and I've seen her denigrate dads and talk about how the system is working great. They need to shut up. Congratulating, oh, this is so great, she's on the bench. No, it's not, because you know exactly what she's going to do. And so that's this fight that we have. But a lot of the dads are forced out. Ideally what the system wants is to lock a dad into a place to where he's almost destitute and poor, but can continue to pay and continue to feed the system. And if you have money, that they want to drain your money. No one is going to walk out of a divorce, because one of the first things, so think about it, when you go in and you meet your attorney for the first time, first thing he says is, I need to see your financials. Why? Nobody has filed discovery. Nobody's done anything. Why do you need to see my financials? Because he needs to know how much money you have and what's in your name. Because he needs to know how far he can run this thing. And if you have a house you can mortgage, do you have a business you can sell? Because they will. And because they'll quote you a price. It'll be 5 to 6 times that price by the time you're done. Then they'll say, do you have family who can loan you money? Do you have a house you can mortgage? Do you have any other property? And it's like, dude, what are you talking about? Because if you don't, we're going to settle. But if you do, we'll keep fighting. And if you don't know the
They're just going to
law,
want you to settle at the end anyway.
well, that's the thing, because a lot of these guys, that I talk about that I get so irritated with, if you knew the law, this would work. No, it won't.
No.
But you must know the law to know when your attorney's lying to you, because your attorney will lie to you. Oh, we can't do that. Yeah. Well, it says right here in the family code, you can file this enforcement and this and da 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 da, 2503 and all these things. And the attorney will go, they will get angry with you because you just told them you know the law, and now they will get angry with a client who knows the law, because now you put them in a place where they feel like they might have to actually do their job. They'll get pissed off.
Well, it's contradictory too. There's a lot of people that say, the system is crooked at the same time. Well, if you know the law, that you can get through it. No, they can do anything they want to inside of these courts because, again, judicial immunity, and it's all about the connections. It's a political system. And it sucks, man. I mean, it really sucks. I was looking at this one right here, Brooks. Justin said, when you stop fighting and becomes a whole other sequence of life issues, you are again looked at different, treated different, judged different, and so much more. It again changes how you make and develop new relationships and friendship. It redefines in societal eyes who you are. That then re-triggers trauma from parental alienation and PTSD and so forth. So if a father that has gave everything he has and he comes up at a dead end, the mom's always blocking him. The attorneys has done taking all of his money. The judge keeps blocking him, and he says, I'm going to pull back. That is the person that they're going to call a deadbeat, because he's not fighting for his kids. He literally fought until he couldn't fight anymore, and you still want to call the guy a deadbeat. And that's why the narrative is so deadly. I say again, that narrative, it's just going to get out there, get you on the hook, and bring you back in. And there's so many guys that are afraid of being labeled that they go in there knowing, like, look, guys, we know that the system is what the system is. Is there occasionally going to be somebody where there's going to get the exception? Yes, that is not nowhere near the majority of the time. Nowhere near it. But at the same time, we don't want to look at you guys and just say, don't fight anymore. But what we might have to do is start fighting a little bit different. We need to find some different ways in getting in here. We don't need you to just say, okay, I'm done with it, I'm walking away. No, get in here. Let's strategize, because we need you, brother. So, what are some of those ways that they could fight?
So throw out our legal disclaimer. We are not attorneys. We're not giving legal advice. Everything I say is a hypothetical unless I specifically name a person, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So in Texas, we've made some interesting discoveries. So if you do in a normal civil court, corporations, businesses, people suing their contractor or whatever, or in a criminal court, our criminal courts used to be corrupt as hell, and some of them still are. I think all our courts are pretty much corrupt, but criminal courts, I mean, good God, the number of black men we sent to prison for being black, right? Well, we had a white girl raped. It must have been a black dude. Well, we saw her inbred hillbilly cousins doing it to her. No, that was a black guy you saw, right? Right. Okay. We know that. We've had so many exonerations and driving while black, and because I'm on the far right, but I know it happens. I know ignorant redneck ass people that do that stuff, and it happens. So we know that there's corruption, but some of that's been cleaned up with the body cams and the cell phone cams, and quite honestly, the riots, the LA, all the stuff that happened, and yes, there's been injustices, but if you do the stuff in civil court and criminal court that happens in family court, federal court will take it up, smack that judge down, smack that system down, and someone's getting paid. Police department's paying someone, sheriff's department, the county, the state. I mean, right? They won't take the family cases because of domestic exemption or domestic relations exemption. They literally put exemptions into federal code, fallacious ones because they're not actually laws, to try to stay out of family court, because if they open that, the floodgate will be so horrendous. They know it. They know it is so corrupt. If we open this door, we will get inundated and the system will collapse.
Absolutely, man.
But in Texas, we've had some people find some things, so perjury's against the law, right? Perjury, and it varies state by state, but it's usually pretty the same. So perjury is when I write something down and submit it. So I submit my unsworn declaration, an affidavit. I file something saying, Eric diddled me the other day, but Eric can prove he was, in Canada, wasn't even in the same country as me. Well, that's perjury. I'm lying to the court, and I know I'm lying to the court, right? Aggravated perjury is when I show up during an official proceeding, so a hearing, a trial, whatever, and I say it out loud. So the perjury is a misdemeanor, aggravated perjury is a felony. In the state of Texas, law enforcement officers must take a felony report. They can't, so on a misdemeanor, they can say, yeah, well, we're not going to deal with that. Jaywalking, drunk in public, that kind of, they can literally say, we're not going to mess with this. But on a felony, they have to take a report and file it and submit it to the DA, right? So that's all criminal law. Because if I sit in court and tell my family court judge, I can prove they're lying. I've got a video right here that shows the exact opposite. They just committed aggravated perjury and when a counsel says it out loud, also an attorney, they've committed aggravated perjury when they present it as fact and they don't know that it's fact or they know it to be false. So my counsel, my ex have just committed aggravated perjury. That's a felony, judge. I want you to do something. They're not going to do anything. Absolutely not going to do anything. But I can walk over to the bailiff, who is an employee of the sheriff's department for the county that I'm in, who is a law enforcement official and must follow the criminal code. And I can say, I want to file a felony aggravated perjury charge with you, and you are the witness because you were sitting in the room when they did it. So I've got a cop as a witness, a cop who must take the report, and I'm going to go ahead and file this with you and show you my and I'll give you my evidence to your detective when he contacts me. So now I've got a cop as a witness, and they have to take the report. If they refuse to take the report, because we've had that, well, I'm not doing that. I work for the judge. No, you don't. And the law says you have to take my felony report, but you're refusing, which means you're breaking the law. So I'm going to go to the sheriff's department and ask for internal affairs. I'm going to file an internal affairs complaint on you, Bailiff Jones, now putting your retirement and job at risk because failure to take a report is a criminal offense. Uh-oh, you just committed a crime. So now I'm threatening your job, bailiff, with internal affairs. And while I'm here, now I'm going to file my aggravated perjury charge with internal affairs, who will take it because they know what's going to happen if they don't. And I'm going to name you as a witness. You see what I'm saying? So we take the criminal court laws and apply them to the actions in family court. We don't allow the family court judge to cover it up like they do, because now they can't. I mean, of course, they can call their buddy and say, you need to dismiss this, call the DA. But now there is a record of criminal offenses happening in this court. And so, that's one of the many ways that we've started to do things down here. Another is to go after the licenses of these hack therapists and to file mass bar complaints. Everybody who sat in that courtroom and watched this attorney commit aggravated perjury. That's why you want to have court watchers. If it's on Zoom, you have people watching. If you go, you bring 5, 6 people. Every person in there can also go and file an aggravated perjury charge because they witnessed it. But every person in there can file a bar complaint noting a felony that this attorney committed, right? And so the bar's not going to do anything until they get enough complaints. And then they're going to, you see what I'm saying? And so
Yep.
It's like being the Viet Cong. We're dressing up in black pajamas, painting our faces black, getting punji sticks because that's all we can afford. We don't have lobbies to buy us M16s and stuff. So we have sharpened bamboo sticks. We dip them in buffalo dung and we run up in mass and stab a bunch of these scumbags in the ass and run away and hope they get gangrene and die. And when one of them gets gangrene and die, we celebrate and we go after more of them. And people will say, well, that stuff doesn't work. No, in Texas, we've had judges.
Metaphorically.
Yes. Yes. In Texas, we've had judges who parents have filed recusals on 6, 7, 8 times. Then out of the blue, when we started doing this in their cases, they recused themselves of their own. And then opposing counsels all of a sudden are recusing and dropping off cases. Custody evaluators are refusing to complete or testify, dropping off cases, because what they see is that I'm no longer being protected by this scumbag, corrupt judge, because they are taking it out of a place where the light sees it in these other agencies, because they're not covered by the cops don't have the immunity a judge does, right? So these cops are going, I'm not losing my retirement over this BS. I don't care if you get your license taken or not. I'm filing this report. I'm going to send it to the DA. Well, a lot of the DAs are shutting it down. They're not going to prosecute it. But we have a DA in El Paso now who their own city is going after him. She's resigned for not prosecuting felony complaints. So this is one of the first times in Texas. So we're making these headways that this DA is getting canned in El Paso, and her own city's going after her because she refused to file felony complaints. Well, once one tumbles, right, that door's cracked, the water starts coming through. Here come the floodgates. There's going to be more and more and more. So we are starting to make those cracks, but we're using the criminal code against the family court actors, and just basically theoretically set a bunch of crap on fire and hope the mansion catches.
Absolutely. Rob Ramos said, I'm not interpreting this as him inciting violence. No, he's not telling you to go and get buffalo dung and do that. That was a great one. That was a great one, though. But I want to bring this up because, talking about this, there's so many double standards. And one of the things that makes people want to give up fighting many times, trying to go through the system, is that contempt. A lot of times they don't look at it. Joshua Aldifer on here said a woman is untouchable for contempt in 90% of these cases. If a man makes one simple mistake, it's all back to the beginning. And many times,
usually, yeah. Because I know women who've never done anything to their child, and their husband is just connected. Their husband is either an attorney or he knows the mayor, and they utterly got screwed just like the men. So yes, but for the most part, that is correct.
I say that too. Let's do something really quick though, because I don't think we've talked about this. We know the majority of the times this is a dad's battle. What are some of the things that women are facing? You're talking about if there's connected, usually there's something there that puts her at a disadvantage because the system is slanted towards men. What are some of those things that you see when women are going?
The system is overwhelming slanted towards men.
Yes.
All right. But like everything, almost nothing is 1-to-1, is 100%, right? Except for like things in physics, like a pound is always a pound. Well, not if you go up to 5,000 feet, it's not going to weigh a pound anymore because of the differential in the air pressure. So even that stuff changes, right? But women have a different stigma. Yep. So men and women are different. Our brains are different.
Really?
Yeah, I know it's crazy. You think I could have a baby and but anyway, we react differently. Women are much more emotional, and everybody knows that. That's why the men are from Mars, women are from Venus. Are called garbage pop psychology.
My ex was from Uranus.
They're actually, they're actually based on some actual real stuff, but they're written for a pop psychology crowd, and that's why they sell masses, and Oprah loves them. But our brains are different. We react differently to bonding, to stress, to all those. Men have more testosterone, therefore we're more aggressive. That's why we're better at war. It also creates muscle mass. That's why men's sports, people watch it, because typically it's more exciting, because watching women's sports is like watching 7th graders. And I'm not trying to bash you, but the U.S. women's soccer team got beat by a bunch of 15-year-olds. It's just the way it is. We are not the same. And so we react differently. But so women face this stigma, right? Because almost all women get primary. If you're a woman and you didn't get primary, you must be an utter piece of garbage.
You naturally have rights.
There are utter piece of garbage women. And I've met a lot of them in the space who've come to me with this story and stuff. And then someone somehow got their actual stuff and sent it to me with all their mug shots and their treatment center. And I mentioned some of them the other day, doing a bunch of meth and slamming into a car with your kids not buckled into the back seat and almost killing them. Yeah, the court got that one right.
Was their ex a narcissist and all this stuff?
Yeah. Their ex is a controlling narcissist freak, and that's one of the things that when people use these terms, you take the meaning out of it because you don't know what you're talking about, and everybody is one, and so it just means nothing. It's like the Me Too garbage. Everybody was raped. Everybody's this. Everything. I talked about those stats the other day. That the stats that they promote aren't even talking about rape and stuff. It's about a free interpretation of. They're trying to pass laws in England that if you stare at a woman for too long, they can file sexual assault charges on you. That you can be a sex offender by staring at a woman and making her feel uncomfortable. That's where we're going in a bunch of these countries, nations, and states.
Y'all better put on them glasses and go around like Ray Charles. I don't see anything.
So if you're a woman and you aren't a complete dope fiend, whack job, turning tricks and, all this other kind of stuff, and you lose custody because of, sometimes a judge could just hate you. I mean, they could just look in and go, gosh, she's hot. I hate hot bitches. Sorry. And you're not going to see your kids because a hot woman took my husband. Who knows what's going on in these judges' head, because they're not competent to do what they're doing. So yeah, you could just be targeted for the way you look. I've seen people targeted for their religion, because the judge was not a Christian. The mother was. The mother argued that this isn't the way it's supposed to work. We were married under a biblical in the church, under Bible, and he's decided to go bang his secretary. Well, the judge is like, well, you and your delusional beliefs, you shouldn't have your kids. What the hell? So yes, but if you're a woman and you don't have primary, there must be something wrong with you. Problem is that a lot of women who don't have primary and there's something is wrong are some of the most vocal voices in this space.
Oh yeah.
And the women who don't have the whack job stuff going on aren't putting the other ones in check. Right. So, I one of the reasons I call out these dads and these fathers who make these dumb asinine statements, oh, I did this and oh, you can too if you just, is because you need to be put in check, because you're spreading false information and you're actually feeding into the narrative. You're actually saying this thing works in a fair, just manner for the children if we only put in enough effort. Because this ass clown from the other night, I said, do you know who Jeff Younger is? He spent about $2 million. He probably knows more about family law than you will ever know. He's probably forgotten more about family law than you'll ever know. But somehow you're magic and he's not. Somehow, if he would just have done what you do, and so then the guy's response, okay, nothing works, fine, you know everything. And I'm like, no, I'm just pointing out the fallacy in your logic. But when
I get no shortage of people that write into the podcast. You don't want to have the success stories on here. I know how to fight the system. You got to do this. 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 We just need more people to hear it. But you don't want people to hear that. And it's like, dude, if what you're saying is the magic answer, then freaking do it. Right.
Well, but the thing is, what they're saying is literally the narrative of the attorney when you go meet with them the first day. We got this. All we have to do is X, Y, and Z, and we'll fight this and we'll have that. And then you lose your ass the first couple of hearings and you come back. What does the attorney say? Oh, we'll deal with this at trial, right? And then when you go to trial and everything turns out even worse or the same as it was, what's the next response? Oh, we got an appellate court. And then you say, Mr. Attorney, how many appeals have you done? Oh, I don't do appeals.
Well, see, those type of guys to me are just as dangerous. When you was talking about the ones on the right that are actually like people on the left, but they're in there and they're kind of camouflaged. These dads that show up and do that are more damaging than the opposition, because they're just out there trying to go along with that narrative. And I did it, so you
long
can.
and short of it is, the people like that, they are not trying to help other people solve a problem. They're trying to self-promote. Look at me. Look, it's like the guy that goes to the gym. So I used to be in amazing shape. I went from being, like the ripped.
That's a sore subject with you. I keep hearing you talk about it. You got to get back in there, Brooks.
I went to being from I was, for a long time in my life, I was about 186% body fat, just shredded. And then I went into the powerlifting thing and I was 265. I weighed 265 pounds and could lift a Mack truck. I was huge. And then I kind of went in between and I was yoked. So when you go to the gym, you have the guys that are just beasts. Right? Whether they're bodybuilders, powerlifters, or whatever, they're not wearing the shredded tank tops with all the stuff and doing the selfies in the mirror. What you have is the little clowns going in there and doing that and posting it online and all this. And you're like, dude, you're not even close. Those guys who post this stuff are doing the same thing as those little dudes in the gym who need to be wearing a baggy sweatshirt are doing. It's like, all you're doing is self-promoting, because what they're saying is, look at me. I did what nobody else can do. No, you didn't. You got lucky. There was no skill on your part. You happened to get lucky, and it doesn't mean it works for anybody else. And the fact that you can't sit back and objectively say, I'm so thankful that this worked for me, this might work for you, but we know they don't follow the law. See, that's an objective response. That's a, hey, let me try to help you with something that just happened to work for me, but I don't know if it'll work for you. But instead, what they're saying is, look at me, I'm such an amazing person. And y'all are all so stupid. Let me come in and run your show, because every single one of these idiots, I've said, you want to come online and educate me? Feel free. We'll record it. Feel free. But I guarantee you, by the time we're done, you are going to be either so angry or so ashamed that, you'll never come online again. Because you don't have a logical argument. All you have is an ego that you're trying to get everybody to go, ooh, Mr. So-and-so, you're so amazing. You've done everything we can. Yay, yes, here, let us throw our, panties at you or whatever. And it's just so stupid. But when we get back to these women, if you don't have custody, there's something wrong with you. And
Yep.
that's not always the case. A lot of times it is the case.
And that stigma was made still off of the bias from men, because it's so biased that if you didn't get custody, you are just a scum of society, right? So it still stems from the problem with men. And I think a lot of the truly alienated women that I've met are in here cheering us on, man. It doesn't bother them one bit because they know this.
So most of the sane ones. So we've had to talk about memes on some people's pages and stuff, right?
Yes.
So most of the sane ones, and so like if anybody's ever seen, Melissa Isaac, her, her stuff, she's a woman. She grew up in this stuff. She sees the system for what it is. She works in it. She's a damn attorney, and she can post memes. I don't meme, whatever. And she can post it and get attacked by men, these white knights, and women saying, you're so biased, so disgusting. See, if you post something about me, someone could put stuff up on their page. Brooks McKenzie, I don't care what you put. He's a rapist, homophobe, racist, hates women. I don't care. Because you know why? It doesn't ring true with me. Right? You can call me a cracker. I don't care. In some contexts,
you're pretty white.
If in West Virginia, that's actually kind of a compliment. You can call me a peckerwood. Hey, in prison, that is a big compliment. So I don't really care. But if you call me something that I really am a little bit, so if you start poking fun at me about my fat face or my gray hair, I take that personally because I know a little bit of it's true, right? That upsets me. So when people get triggered by something that is just a general goofy statement, it kind of lets me know people don't get upset about things that aren't typically true or don't have some kind of, sometimes they do, but in general, people get really upset when you hit a sore spot. So and Melissa Isaac, she's brutal. She calls these women out and say, well, send me your child support stuff and show me you're doing it by yourself. Show me that you're not taking child support and you truly are doing it by yourself. And then ghost response. But a lot of these women get all upset and they get out there or they want to jump in and say, well, me too. Well, damn it. I think we've said, yes, you too, multiple times today, but they don't hear that. The ones who are not objective about it, they don't hear me saying you too. All they hear me talking about is the men stuff. And it's this apperception, this filter that, it's just like someone who's looking for racism can always find racism. Someone who's looking for gender bias can always find. So they are looking to be triggered, where I'm saying women get screwed too, and not all of them are crazy nut jobs. And they have an even bigger stigma because you must be a horrible person if you couldn't get it when you had a 90% chance in your favor to get it.
Oh, the Thomas Valva case up there in New York, guys. Look at that. That mom told him numerous times he is abusing my son. They didn't do anything. Her ex-husband was a cop. And so it was one of those. That mom was truly alienated, and one of her sons died off of this alienation case. So absolutely, it can go in there at the same time.
The ironic thing is, somebody will latch onto those types of cases because it was the mother.
Yes,
who
absolutely.
made the warning, and they will come out and they will try to pass a bill and they will make arguments
Katie's
that
law.
We need to clamp down on dads because look how dangerous dads are. But they will
Katie's law.
Yeah. They will ignore anything going the opposite direction because it does not serve a narrative. So when you look at it, they don't give a crap about your child. And none of this is to protect the child. This is to gain power and control for lobbies, organizations, and nonprofits who make money off a system that creates this false narrative.
It is the biggest facade, guys, because they want you guys as men, as fathers, to think there is nothing you can do. They've got this system so figured out that you're never going to be able to navigate it. And I say it's time to get a different attack, get our people in here, organize, get this stuff out there. And I honestly think we can do it. I'm not just saying that. If I didn't, I wouldn't be here. There's numerous other things I could do a show about and other professions I can have a very good career on, right? But I believe in this so much. I tell you, Brooks, there was one that came in this past Christmas, as you was talking about that I was thinking about. This mom wrote into the show talking about how big of a deadbeat her ex was because he told her kid, look, I gave your mom all the money I had for Christmas for child support for you. So she's going to buy you presents. And some of those was from me. And she said that this dad was a piece of crap for telling the kid that. Now, we don't know both sides of the story, but if that was one of those things where he really did give everything he had to this mom for this child support, she turns around and buys the kids Christmas with the money that came from dad. Shouldn't it say from dad as well?
You know, so the double standards are amazing.
That's a double standard, brother.
Well, but I'm talking about the entire system. So,
oh yeah.
All right, I've got a little bit of expertise in the whole child development field. When your house is on fire and you're inside with your kid, your job's to get them out, right? And your kid is staring at the house burning. What are we going to do? All our stuff's burning. The dog's in there, the cat's in there. You don't look at your kid and say, oh, don't worry about it, right? Because it doesn't alleviate the stress and anxiety. You look and say, hey, baby, it's just stuff. We'll get more stuff. Or, you know, if God decides, or we'll move in with, you know, Grandpappy or Mimi or whatever you are, you know, it will be okay. You know, I'll try to get the dog, or I'm sure the dog got out. You address each of those concerns, right?
Yep.
Because that lets the child know that you've got this. You're taking care of it. It's okay. It's not your job. And that's one of the huge things in parenting is the child needs to be a child and not think that they have to deal with issues. Like, you know,
they weren't built to bear the weight of their parents' choices, man.
You always address the anxiety in your child in an age appropriate way, right? So I've had periods of my life with a PhD where I didn't know how we were going to pay rent, electric bill, everything else, but I didn't tell my kid that, right? I didn't say we're out of money. And some parents do this. We don't have any money. We don't have any food. I don't know if we're gonna be able to eat tomorrow.
And it's easy for you to do that. And so we're not completely beating up on you guys for that, but be cognizant of that.
Yeah, you do not do that.
Their shoulders aren't meant to bear that weight. No, they're not supposed to worry about the bills. Yes. They're not the problem that you're having with your ex. They're not going to be the ones to solve it. They are facing the consequences just like you are. Protect their hearts.
So what I tell them, and I have actually said this to my kid when he was about 3 or 4 years old, you know, because I knew we were in such dire financial straits, and this was right after the first divorce, where my wife drained the account and gave it all to attorneys. So we were broke, and I'm working part-time, and it was a nightmare. You know, so I saw it coming. It didn't happen, but what I did is I prepped my child. I said, hey, buddy, if we had to go like take a long vacation and stay, you know, for a while, would you rather go stay at Granddad's house or Grandpappy's house? Because we've got all these grandparents because all the divorces in our family. And so I actually started, I'd want to go stay here. Okay, yeah, you know, we might do that. And so what I'm doing is I'm prepping him that if someday we have to get out of our home because we can't afford it anymore, it's a vacation and we're getting away and we're going to help them and you see what I'm saying? I'm not saying we're broke and we might starve, but that was the reality. And so you always deal with their anxiety, but in an age appropriate way, but to let them know, I have this under control. I'll worry about it. You just keep playing your chords. You keep playing this, you keep doing that. When it comes to court stuff, the courts will always say, do not talk about the divorce. Well, they're idiots because your child knows exactly unless they're an infant baby, they know what's going on. 2-year-olds know what's going on. They may not know the terms, but they know their whole world's coming apart. Divorce is worse for the child than the death of a parent. They suffer more from divorce than the death of a parent. And if you ignore what they're going through, you know, if we came home one day and mom was dead, would I just say, oh, it's okay, baby, don't worry about it, and walk off? Okay, that would jack that kid up. It's the same thing with divorce. So you need to address it, but you address it in a very specific way. But the double standard is If you're the favored parent, you can say anything you effing want, and the court's fine with it. But if you're the unfavored parent, you say, no, baby, yeah, mama, filed for divorce. Well, but God doesn't want divorce or whatever. Yeah, I know, but not everybody always does what we're supposed to. So, we'll get through this and all that. Well, now you're guilty of talking about divorce and turning your child against. You see the double standard. But if
And
the
that
other
doubles.
side says
Go.
it, if the other side says it, they're an amazing parent for addressing the child's anxiety and doing it in a loving, kind manner. So the exact same words can have the exact opposite effect depending on whether you're targeted or not.
And
So
it's
it really
those
doesn't
double
matter what the
standards.
hell you do.
It's those double standards which makes these guys feel like there is nothing they can do. They are damned if they do, damned if they don't. I got two different comments. I got one from my father and then I got one from my mother, and I want to explain both because I think you guys are both talking to each other. Jason Burmender said, this is so depressing. I've been thinking of giving up to stop the fighting, but this is really making me question everything. Now, let me get down here to Miss Wanda Best. Wanda Best was somebody that admitted, I alienated my child from their father. She said this in front of the judiciary and later found out what was going on. And she speaks out about it. I think it is amazing that she's doing that. Wanda said, my husband gave up to take the pressure off his daughter. It did work at the time. Now, as an adult, she is out there with no real job, contracting STDs, and is still alienated from her dad. Now look at the consequences that child had from that dad stopping.
And that those outcomes are predicted by research from the early 80s. It's like, and that's the thing with this system. It's like, and I use the tobacco industry often as an example. For decades, they were suing the tobacco industry saying you need to put warning on your packages. You're making a product that kills people, and for decades, because of money, lobbyists, legislators in their pockets, corrupt judges and everything else say, oh, no, nothing here. Until 1990, they had to put the warnings on the packages. They said, it does cause cancer. Everybody knew it, but they just everybody was bought off. Everybody was in on the game until there was so much public pressure that they had to do something. And then the very next day, the same attorneys and the same companies and lobbyists who were saying cigarettes do not cause cancer, they're not dangerous, they're not harmful, you have no proof. When they started getting sued, turned around and said, you can't sue us because you morons knew they caused cancer, right? So day to day, the response changes depending on what benefits them. And when we have these courts, these double standards, that's exactly how it is. If you are an alienated parent, mother or father, and you call, hey, I want to talk to my son. I want to talk to my son. And you're going to get a restraining order for harassment, right? They're harassing me. They're going in my time. And when you don't call because you're afraid of getting a restraining order for harassment, look, they don't care. They don't want to be a part of their child's life. Doesn't matter what you do. There's a narrative that is cut and paste that they can drop in. And no one, and in reality, and this is the thing, the judges don't believe this. The attorneys don't believe this. If you are ever in court, again, never go without court watchers. And I would not recommend anybody bringing a recording device. But if someone did, you don't know where it came from. Not giving legal advice, just saying sometimes people turn on their phone recorder and forget it's on. But you'll notice in a lot of hearings, nobody's paying attention. Opposing counsel's not listening. The judge is on playing. I've watched judges watch movies on their phone while I was on the witness stand. They're not paying attention what they're doing. And if you step back and look, they are literally mouthing words to get it on the transcript, on the record. So if you try to appeal, they can say, nope, transcript shows they discussed this. But the problem is there's no camera in there showing that nobody's listening. The judge isn't listening. The other attorney, nobody, they're literally just saying stuff. So you can't come back and say, but they didn't follow procedure. Oh no, because most people don't realize appellate courts are not about truth, right, wrong. They're about procedure. Did they say this and did you object? And like in court, if you do not object, the court assumes that you agree to it. So if Eric, you're in court and you say Brooks is a rapist and my attorney doesn't object, I am now officially a rapist in the eyes of the court.
I was just going to call you a peckerwood.
Yeah.
You said that earlier. I'm going to start using that.
Hey, you know, for those who know that know and won't go into it, I have been labeled a stay down wood. So yeah, that's a good thing. You'll have to Google that later. But that's the thing is you shouldn't have to be an attorney to get justice. But the system the attorneys and judges and these people have created is that if you don't know all these little bitty rules, if you don't object, then the appellate court, and you go back and say this is wrong, the appellate court can look and say, well, you didn't object. No, we're not going to look at it. Well, what do you mean? Well, if you don't object, it means you agree to it. Well, I'm saying I don't agree by filing my appeal right now. And they're like, well, that's not how it works. It is the most trick me, screw me system in the world, who is designed intentionally to keep people from actually getting justice, fairness, or equality, but to make so much effing money for the people who practice it.
100%. Mr. Rob Ramos said, Eric, this is what's happening to me. And to add insult to injury, I've never even met the new boyfriend, and he already thinks I'm a deadbeat, calling me a piece of trash, that I have a band and my kids, and I've never met the dude. I thought every day of my life. I think he thinks I've fought every day of my life for my kids. Let's talk about the White Knight, Mighty Mouse. Here I come to save the day. He gets in there and they'll talk to this woman who says that you're a piece of crap and that you're all these things that she's telling the family courts that you are. And I hate to say it, men are so easily manipulated by this. He wants to be the provider. I want to be the protector. I know he treated you. It reminds me of the guy that gets good results in family court. And because I got that, everybody should get that.
That's the same guy right there.
That's the same guy.
So I'm just going to start replying to him. Okay, stepdad, because that's who you are. You're the guy who comes in and I can handle all this. I can clean this up. And yeah, and until you become the next ex with the next baby on the next hook and then everything else. And then you want to come crawling in on your belly going, how'd this happen to me? But yeah, no, exactly. You know, so, and I think you know Rustin, but the Rustin Wright case was just an absolute abomination. You know, it was the most rigged thing I've ever seen. Well, one of the most rigged things, because I've seen so many. They were never married. So Rustin was never married to Aiden's mother. Aiden is now 18, and I think you've seen the photos. As soon as he turned 18, he's with dad.
They're going to be coming on here before too long. They
spend
some time together.
So he had to turn 18 to see his dad. Past 3 years, he has lived in a boarding facility, residential treatment home, behavior home, military school, because mom and stepdad couldn't deal with his behaviors because his behaviors stemmed out of the fact that they were keeping him away from his dad, right? So I'm unable to parent my child in a healthy manner. I can't do it. He every day expresses he wants to live with the other parent, but you know what? I hate the other parent so much that I'm going to send my kid to a boarding school where he has no parents just to keep him. And that's the stuff we see every day. And you know, and so that's Rustin's thing. But stepdad is a police officer, right?
Yep.
And stepdad, there were multiple occasions where Aiden had all kinds of marks, bruises, scrapes on his body, and reported to being basically beaten up by mom and stepdad. You know, so he's running his mouth as a teenager, and they kicked his ass. And even
we just saw the case in Texas where they found the girl, the corpse was riding under the stairs with mom and stepdad.
Yeah, and so because he's a police officer, when the cops show up, who are they going to believe? The kid or their cop buddy, right? And you know, and it's, you know. So I've done interviews with some kids for scientific purposes, and most of them have completely lost faith in the system because, you know, they'll tell therapists, counselors, you know, and I'm not talking about the extremely alienated ones, but the ones who know what's going on will say, this is happening. This is where I want to be, whatever. And they completely ignore that, right? But if the child comes in and says, what the court wants to hear, well, now a child's credible. And that's one of the things. Or if the child says anything remotely that can be twisted, they'll twist it to put, you know. So in my case, my son at 7 was telling people he was suicidal. I didn't even know. I wasn't informed by the counselors, by the therapist, by my wife, by anybody. They kept it from me. So my son was lying. I was telling him to do it. I was telling him to act like he was suicidal. Once I found out, I was furious. Anyway. Um, but after I found out, we had a hearing where my wife admitted under oath that I didn't even know that he was suicidal. So the next question was, well, then how did Brooks tell him to do it if he didn't know it was happening? And then the whole narrative in the courtroom in front of the changed to, okay, well, he didn't tell him, which you've already testified I did. So you've already committed aggravated perjury. So he didn't tell him. He's just doing things to make him feel this way. Well, then the next question was, he's only getting to see him not even every other weekend. So how is he making him feel this way when he's not allowed to call him, email, text? What is he doing it with mind control? And all their arguments broke down. So they kept switching the story. And it was in an associate judge's court, but of course they don't have court reporters in associate judge's court in Tarrant County, so there's no record. And so the question to the judges, Your Honor, they're literally changing the narrative in here with every question where we've shown that they've lied. Are you not going to do something? And the judge's response was, well, I don't like him. I know he's doing something. And that's literally the thing. So it doesn't matter what evidence you have. Every now and then you'll get a judge where you can force them, and that's another thing, reading things onto the record. If you're denied introducing evidence and you don't request to read it onto the record or make a record of it and read it so it's in the transcript, you don't give yourself grounds for appeal. But if you do, then the judge perks up and goes, oh crap, they know the laws. They're going to start using the laws against us. And that's what's so effed up, that if you're not a damn paralegal, you don't know these things. And they'll come back and say, oh, well, you didn't file your blah, blah, blah within 10 days, or you didn't do Form C widget 12 on the appropriate, and it's like, I shouldn't have to do that to have you follow the law because you were supposed to follow the law. And it's ridiculous.
Absolutely. Joseph Villarreal there on YouTube said, I would tell my son that I'm sorry that he's stuck in the middle of it, that he has a mom and dad that love him very much, and that he just needs to worry about being a kid. Let's talk about the importance of that. What happens when you stop fighting? We've talked about the consequences and everything, and we touched a little bit on this earlier. But guys, I want you to look through the kids' eyes what this fight is doing to them. Sometimes it's easy to just get stuck in, this is my ex, what she's doing, because you constantly got to be on your toes to fight back at it. Again, that kid's in the middle being told all these different stories and then just trying to be a kid. Look at all the different things that these kids have got to go up against in society today, between social media, what's being indoctrinated in a lot of these schools, issues that we never would have thought about when we was younger, guys. They're here. And now they've got this going between mom and dad. So you know what they might do? They might disconnect from that a little bit more and go to this other place over here that's teaching them all these other things, because this battle is just so hard on me. They want to love both of you, no matter who's in the wrong, who's in the right. They want to love both of you. And that's what a kid does. And it's easy when you're in the heat of this battle to say stuff and it comes out of your mouth really quick. I was talking about Uranus earlier. I mean, it'd just come out your mouth sometimes. It's a heated subject. It does make you angry. At the same time, watch your kid's face. If you make one of those mistakes, it's unfair to them. So much of this is just unfair to them. And they already, have the increased chances of going through the fatherless statistics with this happening. I'm curious though, Brooks, one of the things we was going to talk about today, I didn't get the thumbnail done in time, was how every other week still feels like detachment, because there goes 2 weeks. I get to see you for a day or two. And by the time I'm readjusting to you, you're going back home to mom. In many ways, like, what's the fatherless statistics with the every other weekend? I would still think there's chances not being in the house.
And see, this is what most people don't know. The actual definition used by most, whether it's the CDC, HHS, research institutes, universities, some of them will try to base them around expanded standard or standard, crap like that. But the definition, for the most part, across the industry of fatherlessness is any child who lives in a home without the biological father.
There you go.
So every other weekend is a fatherless child.
Okay.
You are not raising that child the majority of the time. Other research has gone into, and this should make it even better, but it doesn't. They've softened it and said, okay, well, they don't live with a father 33% of the time, and still found the same things. And so every other weekend parent is not a parent because you don't have the ability to parent.
You don't get to provide that father's structure. Is that what we're saying here? Because I think that really plays into it. It's hard for him to be a dad, one, when he doesn't have the time, and when mom counterparents everything that he does.
Well, and it's not even so much that. So
okay,
for all of our younger people who still have the hopes of romance and the Harlequin and all that garbage. All right, so you meet the woman or the man that you absolutely adore, right? You want to spend every waking moment with them. You think they might be your future spouse, or for the people who don't believe in marriage, that's your, whatever. Would having a date or spending every other weekend together be enough? Well, sure, it would be fine. Okay. Would you be calling them and texting them every day and all day long? Well, yes, of course. Okay, so for you as an adult with a fully formed brain, and you have that kind of connection, it pains you not to feed that connection. Well, yes, your child without a fully formed brain, whose connection to a parent is exponentially greater than your romantic relationship. A parent child relationship is the most intense, most deep relationship anybody will ever have in their life. And you're expecting every other weekend to meet the needs of a child. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so when we're talking about, so there's a thing called attachment. It's actually my area of expertise. Anybody want to
he's
learn
getting
about,
excited. We're going to do this. I'm going to make sure
anybody want to learn about it? Here's a book called The Handbook of Attachment, right? Little
awesome.
book.
I'm going to pull myself back.
Decades of research by academics who are, for the most part, liberals. And they prove two things: the existence of God's plan for the family and the utter importance of the parent-child relationship and the importance of the father. We know that children who are raised in continuously married biological families as a whole, I don't want to hear but what about as a whole, do better than children in any other situation, right? Children raised in single father homes do slightly worse than children raised in biological parent homes, right? They do slightly worse, but they literally are almost indistinguishable. Children raised in single mother homes across the board, it's an absolute nightmare for the child. Well, that's just sexist. No, that's biology. Remember how our brains are different. We operate in a different way. We are different. So if you had to choose globally one gender, it would be the father if you really cared about outcomes. And again, not the what is, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in general. And so that's the way it works. We've known this. We've known this for decades. But that's why the system's not fed up for kids, because it isn't. It is set up to make money for the state. So when you take either parent out, you're damaging the child. One of the things that has been promoted as a possibility thing for the the father raised children is that a lot of times the father raised children are giving more time with the other parent than the mother raised child, right? And well, how can that be? And again, you're a sexist, you're this, you're that. We know that women across the board in the United States, it's about 80% of divorces are filed by women. Okay. Again, our brains are different. We react to things differently, whatever. We also know that there have been numerous studies that found a very high incidence of personality disorders in people who file for divorce. So most people who file for divorce are women. A very large percentage of those people who file for divorce have personality disorders, and personality disorders are not something you can medicate away. They're intrinsic to the way you operate. So by default, just with those numbers, we're saying a lot of women with personality disorders file for divorce. And if you're a woman and you file and you're all getting bent right now, don't, because I don't know you and I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about in general. So a lot of women with personality disorders file for the majority of divorces. So you have a lot of women with personality disorders who are going to win custody. You have a lot of women with personality disorders who are going to raise a child. And I was raised by someone with personality disorder, and it's a nightmare. And now you have a lot of women with personality disorders who are raising a child, and because of their personality disorder, are going to do everything they can to isolate the child from the other parent. You see all those multiple whammies that are coming
Oh,
down that list?
absolutely.
But if you say this out loud, you're a misogynist. You hate women. No, I don't. I love women. And the ones that I really respect are the ones who go online, and there's a bunch of them out there, but they don't get hyped, who go online and say, a woman has a role as a mother. It is to nurture and support and strengthen and do this. And it is not to go out and do this and try to take the pants off the man and emasculate him and take over the male role, because your brain wasn't built for that. You may think you can do it, but even the women who think you're doing it, you're not really doing it. We see it. And just like a man can't go take over the woman's role. And some men will get offended. Well, I was a stay-at-home dad. Yes, you were, but you still cannot provide what the woman could provide when the child was a toddler and below. In those roles switch, we know that once a child becomes school age, about 4 or 5, they need a mother much more than a father when they're a toddler and below, and they need a father much more than a mother once they hit about 4 or 5.
Because they're a baby when they're younger, and they need to be babied as they get older. They need a little bit more of that toughen up, and you need to get on. I put it like the ways that they parent different. Say you got this toddler that goes and just walks into the door, bam. Oh, baby, are you okay? He starts crying. Dad's going to be like, I bet you won't do that again. Guess who he's going to remember? He got embarrassed by that, right? And there's just different ways. Who was right? Who was wrong? I've heard Dr. Warren Farrell talk about it. I forget exactly how he put it. Like this kid goes through some little accident at school. It's not nothing major, but wants to go home. Mom rushes and goes and gets the kid. Baby, are you okay? And then gets on the dad like, why in the world? You're not showing any empathy. You're not doing anything. But dad was saying, tough up, get over it, and get through your day. Which one was right? Which one was wrong? Well, that's why it's so beautiful when you have a mom and a dad, because they both give different lessons to the kid. And when you bring that together, you get balance, because they do need a little bit of both. But there is going to be some different exceptions to that. Mr. Rustin Wright came in here talking about his case. He said the judge refused.
A clown. Whatever Rustin comes out of Rustin's mouth, it's highly suspect. I don't even know if Rustin Wright is a real person. I think he might be a bot troll or a family law foundation plan. I'm not real sure, but
He said the judge refused to let Aiden testify and excluded all of my evidence. The judge even told my attorney in a side room that he had it with me, and anything that required his consideration, then he was going to rule against me. And the fact that they could actually do this, and you got the kid sitting there, it took till he was 18 in order to be able to go back to see his dad, even to the point that, this is my first time hearing about that. Aiden was in a boarding school. Why, at what point do we say, let's let dad do what dad does? But even then, if they would have said, you know what, off to a boarding school, you guys take care of him and do whatever. If Rustin would have got custody and he would have tried to make some structure in there, I guarantee you he'd have got counter-parented every step of the way. You don't need to do this. You don't need to do this.
And he can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Rustin was under a no contact. He couldn't even call his son at the boarding school. He couldn't give him a phone call. He couldn't chat with him on Xbox. He couldn't send him a text message.
This is what this just blows my mind. At what point do you just say, let a dad be a dad?
So this is the Republican conservative judge, Graham Quisenberry, out of Weatherford, Texas, in Parker County. So he's part of this. He's an established, he is a garbage judge. He hates Rustin Wright's guts. We had people, I was supposed to be an expert witness. I was excluded. This is the only time I've ever been excluded from testifying. This is the judge who was watching a movie on his phone while I was sitting on a witness stand. Apparently he had one of those hearing aids that Bluetooth into your phone also. Yeah. He was watching a movie while I was testifying. And I guess his Bluetooth disconnected because his phone all of a sudden blew up and started playing the movie. And I looked over because he's right next to me. I could have touched him on the shoulder, and a movie's playing and he's scrambling, trying to turn. He wasn't even listening. When people would walk in the courtroom, Jeff Younger attended that trial to witness, to court watch. As soon as he walked in, Quisenberry stopped the court and swore Jeff Younger into the case so that he could put him in the hall. You know, invoking the rule, if you're a witness, you can't be in here. So he would swear people in that walked in to watch in order to put them in the hall so people couldn't watch his court. And afterwards, this judge called sitting politicians and people running for office and asked them, told them to fire someone that's working for them because that someone came and watched his court. He literally called people and said, you need to fire this person because I don't want to watch in my court. And it is our constitutional right to watch courts. So this judge, Graham Quisenberry, is a vile, corrupt criminal who needs to be removed from the bench. And everyone knows it. He's a piece of garbage. I will say it. Put a gag order on me, Graham Quisenberry. Actually, next time in Parker County, I'll invite you to come hear me speak. This is the type of people. And when I go speak in Parker County, they'll say, but not our judge. And I will drop all this right here that I've talked about to the GOP, to the conservatives in Parker County and say, no, this is your judge. Some of them will be furious because they don't know it. And the rest, the establishment shills, will get very offended and just tune out because he has an R next to his name, so he must be good.
Father X on YouTube said, how often have you seen men be able to produce this scientific analysis of moms and dads into their trial as evidence? Or is it generally not allowed as evidence?
Father X. Oh, I sent you an email today, Father X, and it was very abbreviated because I haven't had time to do a very long thing. All right. So there are people, there's plenty of people that have what's in my head in their head, but almost all of them work at universities and research institutes, right? You don't learn this stuff by being a therapist. You don't learn this by doing counseling. You know, this is like, you know, university research brain. This is what I used to do. This is what they do. This is a knowledge base that you're not going to find a lot of places. And it doesn't make me special. It's just I chose to go down that road, and that's what we do. You know, a physicist knows about physics, a child developmentalist knows about, you know, and I was also an experimentalist, so I can read the research and say, oh, this is good research. No, this is crap research. It was set up for a specific finding. It's like anything else. According to your state, you'll have, you know, expert witness rules. In my state, I qualify as an expert witness, but I never give an opinion because the only people who can give opinions, according to our Texas Family Code, is someone who is licensed and has done X, Y, and Z. Well, the X, Y, and Z that they're told they have to do absolutely has no meaning towards the parent-child relationship. And again, it goes back to those counseling lobbies trying to lock down this lucrative thing. They basically set up a system that only certain people can do custody evals, and in reality, the custody eval has no scientific basis. It means nothing. It's a money grab. It means nothing. But the other people who can testify as witnesses, you know, there's guidelines for that. You have to submit the person, submit the report, whatever it is. And if opposing counsel doesn't take so in my case, if opposing counsel doesn't take the time to Google me, they usually won't even say anything. They'll just be like, yeah, whatever. If opposing counsel does take the time to Google me, they will fight tooth and nail, object, dough bear fry challenges. He's not an expert. He's a this, I mean, they will talk about my family, my dog, you know, he's a vegan, he's a carnivore. They'll make up all kinds of crap to keep me out of that courtroom. Because one, they don't know what I'm going to say. And then two, if they do Google me and actually read some of my publications or some of my other stuff, they're like, oh crap, this guy knows. Because one of the things I do is I take all the other evaluations that have been submitted to the court prior to me coming in, and I eviscerate them. Because without a doubt, they're almost all going to be false, full of lies, and actually aggravated perjury. And so I outline that, not in my opinion, but according to the state statutes and the administrative code and what the science says, to show that this person previously just came in and flat out lied to the court for money, which makes him, again, remember those criminal charges we can now file. Here's what the body of research says over 50 years. So typically when opposing counsel knows who I am, they will fight like hell to keep me out of that room, because I'm about to come in and blow up their game, and it's going to be on the record. Remember, they don't want stuff on the record that can have them get in trouble. And so It's just like submitting any other evidence. You just have to be prepared that they are going to come. I have people talking about me all the time, going through my tweets and my Facebook posts, but I don't say anything on here that I wouldn't say in a court of law. I've sat in courts of law and talked about the utter corruption and conspiracy, the absolute violations of the Constitution. And I have in the court of law stated that what happens in these courts meets the criminal definition of child abuse in the state of Texas. And so everybody in here who's pushing to terminate the rights of a parent, either way, mother or father, is committing child abuse and should be charged with it.
Absolutely.
So I'm a big friend. And afterwards they give me tea and crumpets and we sit down and no, not really. They hate my guts.
I hear you. Look, guys, I get a lot going on today. So we've been going for an hour and a half. Usually we go a little bit longer. While I got you here, I want to talk about it again. Tonight's show, you're going to have 2 shows tonight. We're going to be joined by the father of John Mast, the wife of Chad Reed, and the fiance that was just a couple of days away from getting married to Justin Goolsby tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. These are families that lost somebody due to a custody exchange murder and due to the corruption that we've been talking about for the past 3 years. And they still have not seen any results in this case. These cases, there's no justice. And I'll tell you, there is more of them in my inbox saying, I need you to talk about my family member that got killed at a custody exchange. And it's getting to them when we can. Guys, this is a very, very, very big issue. And I'm calling upon the community that if you want to get some results, as much as I hate to tell you this, these are the type of cases that make them say, what's going on? That's why they try to bury these cases, right? They don't want these type of cases to come to light. And so if they don't talk about them, it just kind of goes away. That's not what we're going to do here. It's time to pull out the magnifying glass and show all of society, this is what's going on inside of these courts. This is what happens when these dads try. Here is guys that went through this system. Where are they now? We no longer have them. So when people say, what happens when you stop fighting, or I don't feel like I should go because I feel like something can happen to me, Brooks, when I show up at the custody exchange, could John Mast or Chad Reed or Justin Goolsby had called the courts, called an attorney or anybody and said, I'm fearing for my life when I go to pick up my kids, and have anybody that would have listened to him? I am going to go out on a limb. For the most part, we can say there's exceptions to this. Most of the time, people don't listen to what's going on with these guys until they're dead. And by then it's too late. These courts are
and that's one of the things. So in my case, I'm not allowed to see my kid unless I do it in supervised vision 3.5 hours away for an hour over the weekend. I actually stopped doing supervised visitation because each time it was getting worse and worse for my child. Each time he was getting more and more upset when it was time to end. He was getting more aggravated, because he wanted to come. He wants to live. He was getting, so it actually was detrimental for my child. A lot of people who don't have a scientific background, well, that doesn't make sense. I'll do anything to see my kid. Not if seeing your kid makes them worse, right? Not, and so Jeff Younger gets criticized for it because he wouldn't see his kid because he had to be forced to dress like a girl and call him a girl's name and refer to him as a girl and reinforce this sick, twisted ideology. Well, for a lot of children who do supervised visitation, they actually start not wanting to do it, which my kid stopped wanting to do it also because it was causing him. It's like the dog with the, Pavlov's dog, ring the bell, they get hungry. Supervised visitation, anxiety builds, because in the back of his subconscious, he knows it's only going to be for a little while. When it's over, I'm going to be sad. And so it got worse and worse and worse. Also went through a period of time, my kid didn't want to talk to me on the phone because his mother sits there and listens to every conversation and makes him put on speakerphone. So she creates anxiety for him, and it's a negative event. And so in my case, when I get to the point to where I get to see my kid again and hopefully get primary, because we're going to go down the whole abuse thing. I'm charging everybody with abuse. That whole criminal court thing, we're about to go nuts in Tarrant County. But if it comes to that point, I am concerned. Like I sent you something last night, a mother in San Antonio just killed her kid and killed herself because she didn't want to give the denied custody. That's my concern for my wife because of her personality disorder, that she would kill our child and kill herself rather than acquiesce the child to me. Another concern I have is that her brother, she has a brother in great guy, did multiple deployments, actually worked for a private security contractor over in Iraq and Afghanistan, used to be a very strong Christian man, but all that deployment to war, I think, broke his mind. So now he's been diagnosed with PTSD, drinks a lot and does drugs. Now that's a dangerous combination. But if I ever showed up to pick up my son and he was there, I'm pretty sure I know why he would be there, and it wouldn't be to keep my wife company. Does that make sense? You know,
Oh yeah.
I would have concerns that he is there, he is armed, and his job is to put a bullet in my head. So if I showed up and her brother was there, I would not get out of the car. I would get on the phone with the police and drive somewhere to meet them, because those are my concerns, because I see that playing out, and I know it's a possibility because he's got PTSD and he's a drug addict now. And my wife would rather see my child dead. She's told this to me. I'll kill him before I ever give him to you. She'd rather see my child dead than me have possession of my child.
Absolutely. And I just want to say again, guys, you don't know what's going to happen until it's already there. These are guys that say this is it. But then you talk about, I would call the police. If you look up custody exchange murders, a majority of these things are happening at police stations. I want not a majority. Hold on, let me take that. A good bit of them are happening at police stations. If you look up the custody exchange murders, this is where people went there thinking that they was going to get some type of relief, and it happened anyway. They're not trained. They're told to stay out of that. So that is not a fail-safe thing. I've heard people say, well, what about bulletproof vests or protective helmets? Dude, look at Tyrone Darling. He was shot in the head. Guys, a bulletproof vest wouldn't have done anything for him. It's this simple. We just need to make sure that there's a quality and that these guys are safe, and people need to start listening to it.
But see, that's the thing. If we can reform the system and take the conflict out of it, this doesn't happen. So you and I are getting divorced. A judge never has any say on custody unless there's extreme circumstances. It is literally laid out on paper. This is how it is. The person who doesn't file for divorce gets to pick the schedule, and there's the 50-50. There is no debate. There are no attorneys. No one's going broke. No one's doing this. False allegations, because if you make an allegation, it goes to criminal court. It doesn't go to family court because they're not qualified. So you make an allegation, it goes to criminal court. I get put on a restraining order. If I'm found innocent, I get my time back, and you pay my attorney fees for making a false allegation. So that would cut the false allegations, because you get charged in criminal court for false allegations. So we go down a road that eviscerates the industry. You're not getting drained. I'm not getting drained. They're not ramping us up. And we know going in, it's like filling out a driver's license application. This is how it happens, and this is it, period. This stuff would be minimized immensely, because the people who are doing this, it's because of the conflict the system creates.
So I know this guy's serious and he's joking around at the same time. Alan Allen said a good alternate name for this would be the Cheaper to Keeper podcast. Look, dude, would you believe that was exactly what I got told by the first attorney that I went and talked to that wanted this big retainer? It was cheaper to keep her. My best advice to you, after telling him I got hit and everything, I would tell you to try to go get back with her. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? I just paid to consult with you, and this is what you're going to tell me. It is trash, guys. I mean, the whole system. I don't want to promote it. But again, 8:00 p.m. Eastern tonight. Please, the biggest reason that I want to do this is to make sure that the stories are staying out there, and I want to give a platform to these families so that they know something's going on. Here it is. They've been waiting years for some justice. They're told not to talk. They're told to just, leave it alone. Something to happen. And then we see what happened. The Chad Reed case is one that did go to court. So far, the killer got off. And I'm afraid, guys, that we're just going to continue seeing these. But show up tonight at 8 p.m. Again, like, share, subscribe, and make sure you're dinging the bell so you get these podcasts when we go live. Multiple ways that you can support the show: Cash App, Venmo, Patreon, Dad Talk Today, no spaces, memberships on YouTube and Facebook, and stars and super chats. Now that I got that out of the way, Brooks, tomorrow we're going to be talking about the detachment and attachment with the 2-week every other week scenario, where it feels like by the time I get to see my child, I feel like I'm readjusting to them, relearning who they are. And by the time we're getting comfortable again, they're gone. There's so much that can happen in those 2 weeks. And it's very hard to get that strong bond when you're not being gave the chance.
Yeah. Well, so tomorrow you're going to get about 4 years of university level information in about an hour, but I'll put it in a format that's very understandable. but you'll probably learn tomorrow in an hour what most undergrads with a psychology degree won't learn until they get out of grad school.
That's it, guys. So we will see you a little bit later on. I'm looking forward to it, Brooks. And we'll catch you next time, guys. See you tonight. Hey, everybody. Eric Carroll here. Thank you for tuning in to another exciting episode of Dad Talk Today. While we fight for you, we would ask for you to please help fight for us. Like, subscribe to our channel, and ring that bell so you get notifications every time we go live. There's also Super Chats, patreon.com/Dad Talk Today, and other ways you can support our channel. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next.